It's America Continues. I'm Jim Sharpe on USA Radio Networks. Our phone number is 855-711-4USA, 855-711-4USA. Come up here in a little while. We're gonna call him our guest co-host. Our guest co-host, Malcolm Out Loud's going to join us. If you don't know him from his website, Malcolm Out Loud TV, then maybe you know him from his commentaries that run on stations all across the country, and we'll be talking about some various and sundry topics, including this death of this New York City police officer. Which, interestingly, I got into a little discussion. It was somewhat heated with a family member who shall remain nameless. Not my wife, I'll tell you that, because she's more conservative than I am, I think, in some ways. About how wrong this discussion in our country has gone about police brutality, and why I think it's a discussion we need to have. But if we just keep it all about race, I think you got a big problem. All right, so we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. And it really is. It's awful. It's sad that this New York City police officer died, after being shot in the head. Just, can we have a little respect for law enforcement at this point? That would be nice. All right, that's coming up in a little bit here. I just realized why I'm reading this story. A friend of mine called it Partzheimer's at one point, because I think that's what I was like. How come I'm reading a story from April 22nd on my show from the Washington Post? And I realized why, because the author of this story, Rosalind Helderman, who's a writer at the Washington Post, was tweeting about Bill Clinton's claim yesterday. We played you the clip from NBC News where he claims that he gives a lot of his income from the speeches that he gives, which, we already told you, $100 million between 2001 and 2013. He gives a lot, his words, a lot of his income from those speeches to the Clinton Foundation. As he told the Today Show, I got to pay our bills. So which is it? Does the money go to charity or towards the mortgage? Well, Helderman linked, that's what it was. She linked to an April 22nd piece that she wrote in which she notes that Bill Clinton was paid at least $26 million in speaking fees by companies and organizations that are also major donors. Love this. Eric Soderstrom on Twitter says, number one, donate to the C3 to reduce your tax bill. Of course, 501c3, that's a charitable organization. Number two, get 85 cents on the dollar back to spend on yourself. Number three, profit. It's about the size of it. It really is. Clinton says he gives a lot of speeches, a lot of his speech money to the foundation, which he is then paid from the foundation. Somebody named Dr. Jason B. Whitman on Twitter said basically the charity functions as their own personal slush fund. Yeah, the foundation pays for all his travel that the donors don't. But you got to think about this. So they pay for his travel, which doesn't go to, as we saw from NBC a couple of nights ago, doesn't go to actually putting hearing aids in the ears of African children, and where. Ray Pureface tweets, where does stealing underpants fit into all of this? I don't know, Cinco de Mayo, maybe? Yeah, Eric Soderstrom says he donates them to charity and takes a write-off of $2 a pair. Yeah, very good. All right, so that's now it's all coming together for me. I know what I'm talking about and why I'm talking about it on my own show now. That makes me feel better. You just make such connections, Jim. It's hard for you to remember them all. You need like a map, a mind map. I know. I need my own mind map. I really do. That's a bad inside joke. Yeah. Okay, so guess what? It's Cinco de Mayo today. It's a day when all the perverts get together, Cinco de Mayo, and they smear mayonnaise on the. Oh no, wait, that's the other. It's Cinco de Mayo. I'm sorry, Cinco de Mayo is today. It is the 5th of May, the day before my son's birthday. What is Cinco de Mayo all about? It's funny. Danny Marrero, writing at college.usatoday.com, talks about the annual misrepresentation of Mexican culture in the U.S., better known as Cinco de Mayo. On this day, eager people, most likely with no relation to Mexican descent, since many of us don't actually celebrate this day, across the U.S. are planning their fiestas, complete with piñatas, guacamole, salsa, that's actually not spicy whatsoever for the record, but it's actually just smashed tomatoes and disappointment, and costumes inspired by stereotypes of the Mexican culture. From a historical perspective, the day marks the Battle of Puebla, a day that marks the unexpected victory of the Mexican military against the French army. But the 5th day of the month of May has now been turned into an excuse for excessive drinking and cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation. Acts that are far from honoring those of us in the U.S. that come from Mexico. Danny Marrero. Sounds like it. Are you sure you're not Italian then, Danny? Sorry. As the countdown and the party preparations for fiestas across the country begin, here are 4 activities to avoid engaging in this Cinco de Mayo, paired with alternative suggestions for those who have no relation to Mexico, also known as gringos. Number 1, don't buy sombreros, ponchos, or fake mustaches. We've said that time and time again. Our culture is not for you to create costumes out of. Our traditional colorful materials and attire are not for you to dress in once a year to mock and pretend to be Mexican. Okay, I didn't do it. I'm wearing a black shirt today, which was a poor choice because it's hot in Phoenix today. Number 2, no more wetback jokes. Danny's word, not mine. Your joke about Mexicans swimming across the Rio Grande is not funny. Your joke about Mexicans working the fields is not okay. For many of us, these topics you are marking are still prevalent within our families, and it is offensive to hear someone trivializing our struggles in an attempt to play comedian. Instead, read up on the Bracero program of 1942. Bracero, sorry. Trace its influence to the implementation of Operation Wetback in 1954. That was the actual name. I'm not just trying to be offensive here. Number 1, I'm actually quoting this Danny Marrero at college.usatoday.com. And also that was actually the name of that operation in 1954. Stop calling guacamole guac. That's racist, Bob. That's racist. Guacamole is delicious. We can all agree on this, but the word itself also has significance as it comes from indigenous Nahuatl language, so please make the effort to pronounce it in its entirety. According to Toltec legends, the recipe came from their god Quetzalcoatl. That makes guacamole a God-given gift to Earth. You're welcome, world. Did you invent it, Danny Marrero?
Is this the next track?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mexican traditional music. Which, by the way, do you hear the influence here? Does anybody catch the influence in
the Jim Blossoms influence?
No, it's bum 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 bum. It's in three times.
Right.
Oompa. It's oompa
music.
It's German.
Yeah, it's kind of polka.
It's German in influence because the Germans helped the Mexicans defeat the French.
And they all learned to play music together. Now,
here's
folky.
Here's the best part, and this is what's so interesting to me, is that everybody, there was that school district that banned American flag T-shirts on Cinco de Mayo because they thought it would cause problems. The interesting part about Cinco de Mayo is actually a Mexican-American holiday.
What?
It's not really celebrated in Mexico very much, unless you're in Puebla, where the actual battle took place, where the Mexicans started a string of stinging French defeats that would last at least a century. Yep, in 1862, Cinco de Mayo commemorates the Mexican army's unlikely victory over the much more massive French forces of Napoleon III. And the reason it's a Mexican-American holiday is because the Mexicans that were living in America in 1862 were rooting for the Union and not the Confederacy, because Napoleon had teamed up with the Confederacy. And so, and of course, then Napoleon decided, well, the French should own Mexico, and the Mexicans are like, no, you shouldn't, and then they whipped their butts at Puebla, the Battle of Puebla. And Mexico had trouble paying back war debts to European countries, and France had come to Mexico to collect that debt. Today, Cinco de Mayo has become more of an American holiday than a Mexican one. That's because Mexicans living in America were the ones who celebrated it. They waited with bated breath for the newspaper to come out so they could hear about how the Union was beating up on the Confederacy and how Mexico was beating up on Napoleon. And they believed the two were tied. And so Mexicans living in the United States of America started Cinco de Mayo, the celebration. It's not really celebrated much. So it is truly an American holiday. It's an American holiday, and it's all about celebrating Mexicans living in America. That's what it's about. So don't get your guacamole all in a bunch.
Yeah, like Jake just said, Americans will celebrate anything.
That's true. If it involves drinking, I'm down.
We should make a holiday here.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's since I have decided since I've decided that I can't drink safely. For me, Cinco de Mayo is now Cinco no Drinko. Forever.
I never remember drinking.
Yeah.
Unsafely.
I have a good friend of mine who's celebrating 4 years of sobriety today. What a day. What a day to actually become sober. Cinco de Mayo. Although if you're already hungover and you're like, oh, I can't face a whole nother day's worth of drinking, man. Not a bad idea, I guess, right? All right, I'm Jim Sharpe. This is America Continues. On the other side, each and every law enforcement officer's life counts, including that one in New York that passed away. Plus, Malcolm Out Loud joins us here on America Continues.